The DNA sample sits on the weathered picnic table like an accusation, its plastic evidence bag catching the afternoon sun. Detective Sarah Chun stares at the lab report in her trembling hands, the words blurring as she reads them for the fourth time. After 9 years of silence, the Hartwell twins have spoken from beyond, but their message raises more questions than it answers. 3 days earlier, Sarah had been drinking her morning coffee when the call came in. A routine DN, a sweep of an old crime scene, had yielded an impossible result. And now she stands in Millbrook Park, watching the forensics team pack up their equipment, wondering how 2 boys who vanished in a blizzard could leave fresh genetic evidence nearly a decade later. The morning of December 15, 2014, had started like any other winter day in Millbrook. Snow fell in heavy, determined flakes that transformed the small Vermont town into a postcard scene. 8-year-old twin brothers Marcus and Matthew Hartwell pressed their faces against the frost-covered window of their bedroom, their breath fogging the glass as they watched the world turn white. "Mom," Marcus calls out, his voice carrying the excitement that only comes with snow days. "Can we go sledding?" Elena Hartwell looks up from her laptop, where she's been working on a freelance graphic design project, her coffee growing cold beside a stack of unpaid bills. At 34, she carries the weight of single motherhood with grace, though the dark circles under her eyes betray the exhaustion that comes with raising twins alone. "Let me check the weather report first," she says, though she already knows what the boys want to hear. The local news anchor's voice fills the kitchen as Elena turns up the volume. Expecting another 6 to 8 inches throughout the day, with winds picking up this afternoon. Officials are advising residents to stay indoors unless absolutely necessary. Matthew bounces on his toes, his sandy hair still messy from sleep. "Please, Mom, just for a little while." The hill behind Miller's farm is perfect when it's like this. Elena studies her sons, so identical that even she sometimes has to look twice to tell them apart. Marcus has a tiny scar above his left eyebrow from a fall when he was 5, while Matthew's voice carries just a hint more rasp from a bout of pneumonia the previous winter. Beyond these subtle differences, they move and think as one unit, finishing each other's sentences and sharing an almost telepathic connection that both amazes and worries her. "Okay," she finally says, and the boys erupt in cheers. "But only if you promise to stay together and come home the moment the wind picks up." I mean at the moment. They bundle up in layers, thermal underwear, wool sweaters, snow pants, boots, hats, and mittens. Elena helps them with their scarves, wrapping them snugly around their necks while reciting the safety rules they've heard 100 times before. "Stay on the hill," she says, tugging Matthew's hat down over his ears. "Don't go near the woods. Don't talk to strangers, and check in every hour." "We know, Mom," Marcus says, but he's grinning as he says it. "And take your phones," Elena adds, pressing the cheap prepaid devices into their coat pockets. The boys grab their sleds matching red plastic ones they'd received for their 7th birthday and head out into the swirling snow. Elena watches from the window as they trudge through the accumulating drifts, their figures growing smaller until they disappear over the small rise that leads to Miller's farm. She returns to her work, but finds herself glancing at the window every few minutes. The snow is falling heavier now, and the wind has started to pick up, rattling the old farmhouse windows. At 11:47 a.m., her phone buzzes with a text from Marcus. "Having fun. Snow is awesome. See you soon." It's the last message she ever received from either of her sons. By 1 p.m., Elena begins to worry. She calls Marcus's phone, then Matthew's, but both go straight to voicemail. She tells herself the cold probably drained their batteries, but an uncomfortable knot forms in her stomach. At 1:30, she pulls on her boots and coat and heads out into what has become a full-fledged blizzard. The wind cuts through her jacket like knives, and she can barely see 10 feet in front of her. She follows the boys' tracks, now nearly filled in with fresh snow, calling their names until her voice grows hoarse. The tracks lead to Miller's farm, where she finds their sleds abandoned at the bottom of the sledding hill, half buried in snow. "Marcus! Matthew!" She screams, but the wind swallows her voice. She searches frantically, checking every tree, every bush, every possible hiding spot. The old Miller farmhouse stands empty, its windows dark and door locked. She pounds on it anyway, hoping against hope, but only silence answers back. At 3:15 p.m., Elena calls 911 with shaking fingers. The search begins immediately despite the worsening conditions. Sheriff Tom Bradley coordinates teams of volunteers, search and rescue crews, and state police. They scour the area until darkness falls, then resume at dawn. Helicopters join the effort when the weather clears, their thermal imaging cameras sweeping the snow-covered landscape. For 6 days, the search continues. They find footprints that might belong to the boys leading toward the tree line, but the trail vanishes at the forest's edge where the wind and snow have erased all traces. The theory emerges that the boys, disoriented in the blizzard, wandered into the woods and succumbed to exposure. But no bodies are ever found. The case gradually fades from headlines. Elena never stops looking, never stops hoping, but as months turn to years, even she begins to accept the inevitable truth that her sons are gone forever. Until now. Detective Sarah Chun stares at the evidence bag again, her mind racing. The DNA is fresh, no more than weeks old according to the lab. But how is that possible? And why would it surface here, at this picnic table in the very park, where the Search Command Center had been established 9 years ago? She pulls out her phone and dials Elena's number, dreading the conversation ahead. Elena Hartwell's hands shake as she grips the phone, Detective Chun's words echoing in her mind like a cruel joke. Fresh DNA, the boy's DNA, found just 3 days ago on a picnic table she herself had sat at countless times during those desperate first weeks of searching. "Mrs. Hartwell, are you still there?" Chun's voice carries a gentleness that Elena recognizes, the careful tone people use when delivering impossible news. "I'm here," Elena whispers, sinking onto her kitchen chair. The same chair where she'd waited for updates 9 years ago, where she'd fielded calls from reporters and well-meaning neighbors, where she'd finally accepted that her sons weren't coming home. "I know this is a shock," Chun continues. "I need you to understand that we're taking this very seriously. We're reopening the case immediately." Elena's laugh comes out sharp and bitter. "Reopening the case? Detective, my boys have been dead for 9 years. Everyone said so. The search teams, the FBI, even you. Mrs. Hartwell, I know how this sounds, but the evidence is conclusive. This DNA is fresh, recent. Someone who shares your son's genetic markers has been at that location within the past few weeks." The words hit Elena like physical blows. She closes her eyes, remembering the phone call she'd received 5 years ago from a different detective, a bored-sounding man who'd informed her that the case was being moved to inactive status. She'd hung up and cried for 3 days straight. "What exactly are you saying?" Elena asks, her voice barely audible. "I'm saying we need to consider the possibility that Marcus and Matthew are still alive." The phone slips from Elena's fingers, clattering onto the linoleum floor. She stares at it as if it's a venomous snake, Chun's tinny voice still emerging from the speaker. After a moment, she picks it up with trembling hands. "Mrs. Hartwell, Elena?" "I'll be right there," Elena says, her voice stronger now. "Don't you dare touch anything else until I get there." 40 minutes later, Elena stands at the edge of Millbrook Park, her breath forming clouds in the crisp autumn air. The park looks different now than it did during those frantic winter days 9 years ago. The command center tents are gone, replaced by autumn joggers and a few scattered families with young children. Only the picnic table remains the same, weathered, Pine planks bearing the scars of countless family gatherings and teenage romance carved into the wood. Detective Chun approaches. A woman in her early 40s with intelligent eyes and prematurely gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Elena recognizes her from the original investigation, though Chun had been a junior detective then, often relegated to crowd control and evidence logging. "Thank you for coming," Chun says, extending her hand. "I know this can't be easy." Elena doesn't take the offered handshake. Instead, she walks directly to the picnic table, running her fingers along its surface as if she might feel some trace of her son's presence. "Show me," she says. Chun produces the evidence bag, its plastic surface fogged with condensation. Inside, Elena can see a small swab, innocuous and mundane. Nothing that looks like it could resurrect the dead or shatter a mother's carefully constructed acceptance of loss. "The DNA was found here," Chun says, pointing to a specific section of the table's edge. "Saliva traces, probably from someone leaning against it or resting their mouth near the wood. How do you know it's them?" Elena asks. "How do you know it's not just ... Contamination from the original investigation? We still have their toothbrushes. Hair samples from their bedroom. The genetic markers are a perfect match. But Mrs. Hartwell, the key thing is the degradation patterns. This sample is weeks old at most, not years." Elena feels something crack inside her chest, not quite hope, but not quite despair either. Something more dangerous than both. "Someone's playing a sick joke," she says. But even as the words leave her mouth, she doesn't believe them. "We've considered that possibility. But who would have access to your son's DNA? Who would know enough about genetics to create a convincing fake sample?" Elena has no answer. The few people who knew the boys well enough to have kept something with their DNA teachers, coaches, family friends would never be cruel enough to orchestrate such a hoax. Besides, most of them had moved away or lost touch over the years, as people do when tragedy makes a place feel haunted. "There's something else," Chun says, her voice dropping lower. "We found similar traces at 2 other locations around town. The old Miller farm where they disappeared, and outside the library downtown." Elena's knees nearly buckle. "Recent? All within the past month. Someone matching your son's DNA, a profile, has been moving around Millbrook, and they're not being particularly careful about hiding it." "Why?" Elena asks, the question escaping as barely more than a breath. "Why would they come back now? Why would they make themselves known like this?" Chun's expression grows troubled. "I don't know. But Mrs. Hartwell, if your sons are alive, if they've been alive this whole time, we need to consider what that means. Where they've been. Who's had them. What's been done to them." The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. If the boys are alive, then their disappearance wasn't an accident. Someone took them. Someone has had them for 9 years. Someone who might still have them now. "Oh God," Elena whispers, pressing her hand to her mouth. "We're going to find them," Chun says firmly. "But I need you to help us. I need you to think back to that day, to the weeks before they disappeared. Was there anyone new in their lives? Anyone paying unusual attention to them?" Elena shakes her head automatically, then stops. There had been someone, hadn't there? A memory surfaces, fuzzy and half-formed. The boys had mentioned a new friend, someone they'd met at the park. They'd been excited about it, chattering about how this person knew all sorts of interesting things and told great stories. There was ... double quotes Elena begins, then stops. The memory feels important but fragile, like something that might dissolve if she pushes too hard. "They mentioned someone, a new friend. But I thought they meant another kid from school. What exactly did they say?" Elena closes her eyes, reaching back through 9 years of grief and forced forgetting. "They said they'd met someone who understood them, someone who knew what it was like to be a twin. I remember thinking it was sweet that they'd found another set of twins to play with. Chun pulls out a notebook, her pen poised. Did they give you a name? I double quotes. Elena struggles with the memory. Something with a J, maybe? Or a G. I'm sorry, I just didn't pay enough attention. They were always making friends, always talking about kids from school I'd never met. It's okay, we'll work with what we have. Chun closes the notebook and looks directly at Elena. Mrs. Hartwell, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Elena nods, though something in Chun's tone makes her stomach clench. If we find your sons when we find them, they may not be the same boys who disappeared. 9 years is a long time, especially for children. They may not remember you. They may have been told things about you, about why they were taken. They may not want to come home. The words hit Elena harder than she expected. She'd been so focused on the possibility that they might be alive that she hadn't considered what alive might mean after 9 years of absence. I don't care, she says fiercely. I don't care what they remember or what they've been told. They're my sons. Chun nods, but Elena can see the doubt in her eyes, not doubt about Elena's love, but doubt about whether that love will be enough to bridge 9 years of separation and whatever trauma has filled that time. As they stand beside the picnic table, Elena's phone buzzes with a text message. She glances at it absently, then freezes. The number is unfamiliar, but the message makes her blood run cold. Mom? It's us. We're ready to come home now. Meet us where it all began. Elena's phone clatters to the ground as her legs give out. Detective Chun catches her arm, steadying her against the picnic table as she stares at the device lying in the autumn. Leaves, what is it? Chun asks, following Elena's gaze to the phone. With shaking fingers, Elena retrieves it and shows Chin the screen. The detective reads the message twice, her jaw tightening with each word. When did this come in? Chun asks, pulling out her own phone to call for backup. Just now. Right now. While we were talking. Elena's voice comes out hollow, distant. Detective, where it all began. That has to mean Miller's farm, doesn't it? The sledding hill? Chun nods grimly as she speaks into her radio, requesting immediate units to converge. On the old Miller property. Mrs. Hartwell, I need you to stay here. We don't know what we're walking into. Absolutely not. Elena's voice sharpens with determination. If my sons are there, if they're really there, I'm not waiting in a parking lot while strangers approach them. They've been gone for 9 years. They need to see me. Elena, listen to me. Chun grabs her shoulders, forcing eye contact. If this is real, and I'm still not convinced it is, then whoever has had your boys for 9 years just made contact. They chose this moment, this method, that suggests planning, control. We could be walking into a trap. Elena pulls away from Chun's grip, then we spring it. But I'm going. Chun studies Elena's face and seems to recognize the futility of argument. Fine, but you follow my lead, you stay behind me, and if I tell you to run, you run, understood? Elena nods, though they both know she's lying. Nothing on earth could make her run from her children, not after 9 years of believing them dead. The drive to Miller's farm takes 12 minutes that feel like hours. Elena sits in the passenger seat of Chun's unmarked car, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles have gone white. The autumn landscape blurs past cornfields harvested down to stubble, bare trees reaching toward a gray sky, the ordinary world that has continued spinning while her life stopped. Tell me about that day again, Chun says, her voice carefully. Neutral. The morning they left. Was there anything unusual? Anything at all? Elena forces her mind back to December 15th, 2014, though it's a place she's tried hard not to visit. They were excited about the snow. More excited than usual, maybe. And double she pauses. Another memory surfacing. They asked specifically about Miller's farm. Usually they just wanted to go sledding somewhere, anywhere. But that morning, Marcus Specifically said the hill behind Miller's farm. Did they say why? I thought it was because the hill there was the best for sledding. It's steep, long, perfect for kids. Elena's voice catches. I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why they were so specific. You couldn't have known, Chun says, but Elena can hear the detective's own doubts. In 9 years of investigating disappearances, Chun has learned that parents always find ways to blame themselves. Especially when, there's nothing they could have done differently. They turn onto the gravel road leading to the Miller property, and Elena's chest tightens. She hasn't been here since the search ended, hasn't been able to face the place where she last saw evidence of her son's presence. The farmhouse looks smaller than she remembered, more run down. Paint peels from its weathered siding, and several windows are boarded up. The Miller family moved away 2 years after the disappearance, unable to bear the constant reminder of what happened on their land. Chun parks behind 2 police cruisers that have already arrived. Through the windshield, Elena can see officers spreading out around the property, their hands resting on their service weapons. The sight sends a chill through her. If this is really them, Elena says quietly, please don't let them see the guns first. Please. Chun nods and radios the other officers to holster their weapons unless a direct threat emerges. Then she turns to Elena, her expression serious. Whatever we find here, whatever happens, I need you to remember that 9 years is a long time. If your sons are alive, they're not 8-year-old boys anymore. They're 17, nearly adults. They've lived an entire other life that you know nothing about. Elena's throat tightens. 17. Her babies would be 17 now, old enough to drive, to vote, to make their own decisions about whether they want a relationship with the mother they might barely remember. They approach the sledding hill. On foot, Chun slightly ahead with her hand near her weapon. The other officers fan out in a loose perimeter, close enough to provide backup, but far enough away to avoid looking like a military operation. Elena's heart pounds so hard she can feel it in her throat. The hill is empty. Elena stands at the crest, looking down the gentle slope where her sons once played, where their abandoned sleds were found half buried in snow. There's no sign of anyone having been here recently, no footprints, no disturbance in the grass, no teenagers waiting for their mother. Maybe they meant somewhere else, Elena says, though she doesn't believe it. Where it all began has to mean here. Chun's radio crackles to life. Detective, we've got something at the farmhouse. You need to see this. They hurry across the field, Elena's heart hammering with each step. One of the officers, a young man Elena doesn't recognize, stands beside the farmhouse's back door, his face pale. The door was already open, he says as they approach. But look at this. He points to the door frame, where words have been carved into the wood with something sharp. Fresh cuts, the wood still showing pale yellow where bark has been stripped away. Elena reads them and feels the world tilt sideways. Marcus and Matthew were here October 23rd, 23. Today's date. They were here today, Elena breathes. They're close. They have to be close. Chun examines the carving more carefully. This was done recently, within the last few hours. She looks around the empty farmyard, her eyes scanning the tree line. But where are they now? Elena's phone buzzes again. Another text message. This time, there's a photo attached. Elena opens it with trembling fingers and nearly drops the phone again. The image shows 2 young men, clearly twins, standing in what appears to be a wooded area. They're older, taller, their faces showing the angular definition of near adulthood. But Elena would know those eyes anywhere, Marcus's serious expression, Matthew's slightly lopsided smile. Her son's alive, looking directly into the camera. Below the photo, another message. We're watching you right now, Mom. We need to make sure you're alone. Elena spins around, scanning the tree line with desperate eyes. Boys! She calls out, her voice echoing across the empty field. Marcus. Matthew, I'm here. I'm alone. Chun grabs her arm. Elena, stop. If they're watching, we need to be careful. We don't know who else might be with them. But Elena shakes her off, walking toward the woods. I don't care. My sons are alive. There. Here, she calls out again, louder this time. Please, boys. It's Mom. I've been looking for you for 9 years. The silence that follows feels endless. Then, from somewhere in the woods, a voice calls back young, male, uncertain. Mom, is it really you? Elena runs toward the tree line. Detective Chun shouts. To wait falling on deaf ears. Her heart pounds against her ribs as she crashes through the underbrush, branches catching at her jacket, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Mom, stop. The voice comes again, closer now, and Elena freezes. The timbre is deeper than she remembers, but there's something in the cadence, the slight rasp that could only be Matthew. Where are you? She calls, spinning in a circle among the oak trees. Please let me see you. A rustling sound comes from her left, and then they emerge from behind a massive tree trunk, 2 young men who are unmistakably her sons despite the years that have carved away their childhood softness. Marcus stands slightly ahead, his shoulders squared in a protective stance Elena recognizes from when he was 5 years old, shielding his brother from playground bullies. Matthew hangs back, his eyes darting nervously between Elena and the tree line behind them. Elena's knees buckle at the sight of them. They're alive, they're real, they're here. Marcus, she whispers, then louder, Matthew. She takes a step forward, then another, her arms reaching out instinctively, but both boys take a step back. Don't, Marcus says, his voice carrying an authority that stops Elena cold. Not yet. We need to talk first. Elena's arms fall to her sides, the rejection hitting her like a physical blow. She studies their faces, searching for traces of the 8-year-old she lost. Marcus has grown tall and lean, his sandy hair now darker, cropped short. A thin scar runs from his left temple to his jaw, new damage she doesn't recognize. Matthew has filled out more, broader through the shoulders, but his eyes hold a wariness that makes Elena's chest ache. I don't understand, Elena says, her voice breaking. I've been looking for you. I never stopped looking. We know, Matthew says, his voice gentler than his brother's. We've been watching you, following the searches in the news. We know about the anniversary vigils, the reward money you offered. Then why? Elena's voice cracks completely. Why? Didn't you come home? Why didn't you let me know you were alive? Marcus and Matthew exchange a look, one of those wordless twin communications Elena remembers so well. But there's something different about it now, something coded and careful that speaks of secrets she's not privy to. Because we weren't allowed to, Marcus says finally. And because we weren't sure you'd want us back. Elena stares at him in shock. Not want you back? You're my children. You're my everything. How could you think? Because of what we've become, Matthew interrupts, his voice barely above a whisper. Because of what we've had to do to survive. Detective Chun's voice carries through the trees, calling Elena's name with increasing urgency. Marcus and Matthew both tense, their postures shifting into something alert and predatory. You brought the police, Marcus says, and there's accusation in his tone. Of course I brought the police. You've been missing for 9 years. There's been a federal investigation, search teams, billboards with your faces. We know about the billboards, Matthew says. We've seen them. It's part of why we finally decided to contact you. Elena feels like she's having 2 different conversations at once. Decided? You make it sound like you had a choice all along. Another look passes between the boys. Marcus nods slightly, and Matthew seems to relax a fraction. We did have a choice, Marcus says. Eventually. But Mom, the police can't be involved. Not yet. If you want to see us again, if you want us to explain everything, you have to trust us. You have to come alone next time. Next time? Elena feels panic rising in her throat. No, you're not leaving again. I won't lose you again. She lunges forward, desperate to grab them, to hold them, to make them real and solid and unable to disappear. But they're faster than she is, stepping back with a fluid coordination that speaks of years of practice. Mom, stop, Matthew says, and there's genuine pain in his voice. Please, we're not going anywhere far, we're staying close. But we need time to figure out how to do this. Do what? Come back to a life we barely remember, Marcus says. Come back to being your sons instead of. He doesn't finish the sentence, but the implication hangs in the air between them like a physical presence. Instead of what? Elena wonders. What have they been for 9 years, if not her sons? Detective Chun's voice is closer now, accompanied by the sound of multiple officers crashing through the underbrush. Marcus grabs Matthew's arm. We have to go, he says. Wait. Elena calls out desperately. When will I see you again? How do I contact you? We'll contact you, Matthew says. Tomorrow night. 7 p.m. Come to the old covered bridge on Millfield Road. Come alone, and don't tell the police. I can't not. Tell the police. They know you're alive now. They know. Then tell them we ran, Marcus says with the cold practicality of someone much older than 17. Tell them we were scared of getting in trouble for disappearing. Tell them whatever. You need to tell them, but don't let them follow you tomorrow night. Getting in trouble? Elena stares at him. Marcus, you were 8 years old. You can't get in trouble for being kidnapped. Something flickers across Marcus's face, surprise, maybe, or confusion. Kidnapped? The word seems to hang in the air. Between them, heavy with implications, Elena doesn't understand. Matthew grabs his brother's arm more urgently. We really have to go, he says. Mom, we want to explain everything. We want to try to come home, but it has to be on our terms. Please. Elena nods frantically, tears streaming down her face. Yes, okay, whatever you need. Just don't disappear again. Please don't disappear. We won't, Matthew promises. But Mom? He hesitates, then meets her eyes directly for the first time. When we tell you everything, when you understand what really happened and where we've been, you might not want us to come home anymore. Before Elena can respond, both boys turn and melt back into the woods with a silence that speaks of years of practice. Within seconds, it's as if they were never there at all. Elena stands alone among the trees, staring at the spot where her sons vanished for the second time in her life. Detective Chun and 2 other officers burst through the underbrush moments. Later, their weapons drawn. Elena, are you okay? We heard voices. They were here, Elena says, her voice hollow with shock. My sons were here. They're alive. Chun scans the woods, then looks back at Elena with sharp eyes. Where are they now? Elena meets the detective's gaze and makes a choice that will determine whether she gets her sons back or loses them forever. They ran, she says. They saw the police and ran. Detective Chun studies Elena's face with the practiced eye of someone who has interrogated hundreds of suspects. Elena forces herself to meet the detective's gaze, knowing that everything depends on selling this lie. Which direction? Chun asks, already motioning for the other officers to spread out. North, Elena says, pointing away from where the boys actually disappeared, toward the old quarry road. They moved fast. I think they knew these woods well. Chun's radio crackles as she coordinates the search, dispatching units to establish a perimeter around the quarry area. Elena watches the officers disappear into the trees, her stomach churning with guilt and fear. She's lying to the police, obstructing a federal investigation, possibly destroying her only chance at an official reunion with her sons. But the look in Marcus's eyes, the cold calculation, mixed with something that might have been desperation, tells her she's made the right choice. Whatever happened to her boys in the 9 years they were gone, they've learned not to trust authority. If she brings the police to tomorrow night's meeting, she knows with absolute certainty that she never see them again. Elena, Chun says, her voice gentler now, I need you to tell me exactly what they said. Every word you can remember. Elena takes a shaky breath and begins to construct a version of the truth. They were scared. When they saw the police, they panicked. Marcus said they thought they'd be in trouble for disappearing, that they'd be blamed somehow. Blamed for what? I don't know. They didn't have time to explain before they ran. Elena meets Chin's eyes. Detective, they looked older, not just physically. There was something in their eyes, something that wasn't there when they were 8, Chun nods grimly. Trauma ages children fast. Elena, I need you to prepare yourself for the possibility that your sons have been through things, done things that changed them fundamentally. Elena thinks about Marcus's protective stance, the way both boys moved with fluid coordination, the practiced silence of their retreat into the woods. What kind of things? That depends on who had them and what they wanted them for. Chun's expression grows troubled. Elena, children who disappear for extended periods. They don't always come back as victims. Sometimes they become participants. Sometimes they become perpetrators. The words hit Elena like a slap. They're my sons. They were 8 years old when they disappeared. Whatever they've had to do to survive, I'm not judging them, Chun says quickly. I'm just trying to prepare you. 9 years is a long time. Long enough for an 8-year-old to forget their old life entirely. Long enough to be shaped into something completely different. Elena's phone buzzes with a text message. Her heart leaps, hoping it's another communication from the boys, but it's just a spam message about car insurance. Still, the sound makes Chun's eyes sharpen. Have they tried to contact you again since the first message? Elena shakes her head, the lie coming easier now. Nothing. If they do, you call me immediately. Don't try to handle this alone. Chun hands Elena a card with her direct number. Elena, I understand the impulse to protect them, but if your sons are alive, they're witnesses to their own kidnapping. They may be the only people who can tell us who took them and where they've been. That information could help other missing children. Elena pockets the card, knowing she'll never use it. Not tonight anyway. What happens now? We process the DNA evidence, canvass the area, interview anyone who might have seen them. We try to figure out where they've been staying, how long they've been back in the area. Chun pauses. Elena, there's something else you should know. The DNA traces we found weren't just random. They were placed deliberately in locations that would be discovered during routine evidence collection. Someone wanted us to find them. What do you mean? I mean your sons or whoever is with them are playing a very sophisticated game. They know how police investigations work. They know how to manipulate evidence collection and media attention. Chun's expression grows darker. That kind of knowledge doesn't come naturally. Someone taught them. Elena feels a chill that has nothing to do with the October wind. You think whoever took them is still controlling them? I think we need to consider every possibility. Chun's radio crackles again, and she listens to the report with growing frustration. The search teams have found no trace of the boys near the quarry road. Elena, I'm going to have an officer escort you home. I want you to stay there tonight. Keep your doors locked and call me if anything unusual happens. I'm not a prisoner, Elena says, but Chun's expression stops her protest. No, but your sons might be. And if whoever has been controlling them for 9 years decides you're a threat to their arrangement. Chun doesn't finish the sentence, but Elena understands the implication. The drive home passes in a blur of autumn countryside and racing. Thoughts. Officer Davies, a young man with kind eyes and nervous energy, attempts small talk but gives up when Elena responds only in monosyllables. Her mind is entirely focused on tomorrow night, on the covered bridge on Millfield Road, on the moment when she finally learned what happened to her children. Alina's house feels foreign when she enters it, as if seeing her sons alive has somehow shifted the fundamental nature of her reality. Everything is the same: the kitchen table where she's eaten countless solitary meals, the living room where she's watched 9 years of news reports about other missing children, the staircase leading to bedrooms she's kept exactly as the boys left them, but nothing feels the same. She climbs the stairs slowly, her legs shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline crash. At the top of the landing, she hesitates between two doors. Marcus's room to the left, Matthew's to the right. She'd insisted on separate rooms, even though the boys preferred to share, thinking that would help them develop individual identities. She enters Marcus's room first. Everything is exactly as he left it. Star Wars posters on the walls, Lego sets arranged on shelves, a half-completed jigsaw puzzle still spread across his desk. Alina sits on the narrow bed and tries to reconcile the 8-year-old who slept here with the 17-year-old she met in the woods. Marcus had always been the leader, the protector, the one who made decisions for both boys. But the young man she saw today carried that responsibility like a weight, his shoulders squared against threats she couldn't even imagine. What had he protected Matthew from for 9 years? And what had that protection cost him? Alina moves to Matthew's room, where soccer trophies line the windowsill and a collection of chapter books sit spine up on the knitstand. Matthew had been the gentler twin, the one who cried during sad movies and brought home injured animals to nurse back to health. But today, she'd seen wariness in his eyes, a careful calculation before he spoke. Where was the boy who used to climb into her bed during thunderstorms? Alina's phone rings, startling her from her thoughts. Chun's name appears on the caller ID. "We found something," Chun says without preamble. "Alina, I need you to sit down." Alina perches on the edge of Matthew's bed, her heart hammering. "What is it?" We ran the DNA through expanded databases, looking for any additional matches. "Alina, your son's DNA appears in connection with 3 unsolved cases over the past 5 years. 3 cases in 3 different states." Alina's mouth goes dry. "What kind of cases?" "Missing persons, all children. All taken from small towns during winter months." Chun's voice grows heavier. "Alina, I need you to consider the possibility that your sons weren't just victims. They may have been used to help abduct other children." The phone slips from Alina's numb fingers, clattering onto Matthew's bedroom floor. Through the window, she can see the woods where her sons disappeared 24 hours ago, where they reappeared today as strangers wearing familiar faces. Tomorrow night, she'll meet them at the covered bridge. Tomorrow night, she'll learn what monsters look like when they have your children's eyes. Alina barely sleeps. She lies in her bed staring at the ceiling, Chun's words echoing in her mind. Like a curse. Your sons may have been used to help abduct other children. Every time she closes her eyes, she sees Marcus's face older, harder, marked by that strange scar. She sees Matthew's careful wariness, the way he looked around the forest, as if searching for threats or escape routes. At 6:47 a.m., her phone buzzes with a news alert. She opens it with trembling fingers and nearly drops the device. The headline reads, "Hartwell twins spotted alive after 9 years manhunt underway." Below the headline is a grainy photo, clearly taken with a telephoto lens, showing 2 figures in the woods. Alina recognizes the scene. It's from yesterday's encounter, taken from a distance that suggests the photographer was positioned well outside the police perimeter. Her phone rings immediately. Chun's number. "Alina, where are you right now?" Chun's voice is tight with urgency. "At home, I just saw the news. Don't leave your house. We've got media vans heading your way, and I need to brief you on some developments before you talk to anyone." Alina peers through her front window. and sees the first news van already pulling into her driveway. Too late, they're here. Don't answer the door. Don't answer any calls from numbers you don't recognize. I'm sending a unit to keep the press back. Elena watches as more vans arrive, reporters spilling out onto her lawn like ants from a disturbed nest. Cameras with long lenses point at her. Windows, and she quickly steps back from the glass. Detective, the photo in the news, how did they get it? We're investigating that. Someone was monitoring police communications, knew exactly where to position themselves. Chun's voice carries a note of suspicion that makes Alana's stomach clench. Elena, we need to talk. There are things about your son's reappearance that don't add up. Elena thinks about the meeting tonight, about the promise she made to come alone. Through her kitchen window, she can see more news crews setting up equipment on the street. How is she supposed to slip away unnoticed with half the state's media? Camped outside her house? I can't leave, Elena says. There are reporters everywhere. I'll handle that. Give me 20 minutes. Elena spends those 20 minutes pacing her kitchen, avoiding windows, and trying to calm her racing heart. When Chun arrives, she brings 2 uniformed officers who immediately begin moving the news crews back to the street. They can film from the public sidewalk, Chun explains as she enters. Elena's kitchen, but not from your property. She looks around the familiar space, noting the way Elena's hands shake as she pours coffee. Elena, we need to discuss what happens if your sons try to contact you again. Elena's throat tightens. What do you mean? I mean we need to be ready. If they reach out, we need a plan for bringing them in safely. Chun sits at the kitchen table, pulling out a file folder. Elena, I've been thinking about what they said to you yesterday. About not being sure if you'd want them back. That's ridiculous. Of course I want them back. But they don't know that. Think about it from their perspective. They've been gone for 9 years. In their minds, you've moved on. Built a new life. Maybe they think you're better off without them. Elena stares at Chen. How could they think that? Because someone told them you were. Elena, children who are taken and held for extended periods are often psychologically manipulated. They're told their families don't want them, don't miss them, are happier without them. It's a control mechanism. Elena feels sick. You think someone convinced my boys that I didn't love them? I think someone convinced them of a lot of things. Over the past 9 years. And Elena, some of those things might be true. Chun opens the file folder, revealing crime scene photos. I need you to look at these. I need you to tell me if you see anything familiar. The photos show 3 different scenes: a playground in Ohio, a school parking lot in Pennsylvania, a small-town Main Street in West Virginia. In each photo, Elena can see evidence markers indicating where DNA samples were collected. These are the scenes where your son's DNA was found, Chun explains. All 3 locations where children went missing over the past 5 years. Elena, in each case, witnesses reported seeing 2 teenage boys in the area shortly before the disappearances. Boys who matched your son's description. Elena's hands shake as she studies the photos. You're saying they helped kidnap other children? I'm saying we have to consider that possibility. Elena, if your sons were taken by an organized group, traffickers, cult members, professional kidnappers, they might have been trained to help with recruitment. Using children to lure other children is a common tactic. Elena pushes the photos away, unable to look at them anymore. They were 8 years old when they disappeared. They were babies. And now they're 17, old enough to make their own choices, old enough to be held responsible for their actions. Chun's voice softens slightly. Elena, I know this is hard to hear, but if your sons have been involved in other disappearances, they're going to need help, professional help, legal help. The kind of help they can only get if they cooperate with law enforcement. Elena thinks about the meeting tonight, about Marcus's insistence that she come alone. What if they won't cooperate? What if they run again? Then we treat them as suspects instead of victims. Elena, right now they have the benefit of the doubt because they were children when they were taken. But if they refuse to help us understand what happened to those other missing kids? Chun doesn't finish the sentence, but Elena understands. The afternoon passes in a haze of avoiding reporters and fielding calls from people Elena hasn't heard from in years. Her sister calls from California, crying. Her mother calls from Florida, demanding explanations Elena can't give. Friends from the old days, neighbors who moved away, former co-workers, everyone wants to know if it's true, if the boys are really alive, if Elena is okay. Elena isn't okay. She's terrified. As evening approaches, she watches the news crews begin to thin out, their attention shifting to the 6 p.m. broadcasts. A few die-hard reporters remain, but Elena can see them setting up for what looks like a long night of waiting for something newsworthy to happen. At 6:30 p.m., Elena makes her decision. She goes to her basement and retrieves a black hoodie she bought years ago but never wore. She pulls it on, zips it up, and raises the hood. Then she goes to her garage and does something she hasn't done in months. She starts her car. The garage door opener sounds impossibly loud in the quiet evening. Elena waits, holding her breath, but no reporters come running. She backs out slowly, keeping her headlights off until she's clear of the driveway. The covered bridge on Millfield Road is 15 minutes away through back roads. Elena knows by heart. She's driven this route countless times over the years, sometimes purposely, sometimes finding herself here without conscious decision. The bridge has always felt like a sacred place to her, one of the last locations where she has clear, happy memories of the boys. They'd come here for family picnics when the boys were small, spreading blankets on the banks of Miller Creek while Marcus and Matthew caught minnows in mason jars. Elena can still see them in her mind's eye gap-toothed grins, grass-stained knees, the absolute certainty that their mother could fix anything. She parks at the small gravel turnout near the bridge and checks her phone. 6:57 p.m. Her hands are shaking so badly she can barely hold the device. At exactly 7 p.m., her phone buzzes with a text message. Walk to the middle of the bridge. Come alone. We're watching. Elena gets out of her car and walks toward the covered bridge, her footsteps echoing in the enclosed space. The old wooden structure smells of creosote and decades of weather, and her footsteps sound hollow on the weathered planks. She reaches the middle of the bridge and stops, looking out through the open sides at the creek below. The water moves slowly in the fading light, peaceful and familiar. Mom! Elena turns, and there they are, Marcus and Matthew, emerging from the shadows at the far end of the bridge. They walk toward her slowly, cautiously, and Elena sees that they're both carrying backpacks. Heavy ones, judging by the way the straps cut into their shoulders. You came, Matthew says, and there's genuine surprise in his voice. Of course I came. Elena takes a step toward them, then stops when she sees Marcus tense. I told you I'd come. You brought the police yesterday, Marcus says, his voice flat. I didn't know you were alive yesterday. I didn't know what else to do. Elena searches their faces, looking for traces of the children she lost. But I'm here now. I'm alone, just like you asked. Marcus and Matthew exchange one of their wordless looks, then Marcus nods slightly. Okay, he says. Let's talk. Elena takes a step closer to her sons, but Marcus raises his hand, a gesture that's both protective and threatening. Stay there, he says. We need to explain some things first, and you need to listen without interrupting. Can you do that? Elena nods, though every instinct screams at her to close the distance, to touch them, to prove to herself that they're real. Matthew sets his backpack down with a soft thud that echoes through the covered bridge. Mom, what we're going to tell you. It's going to change everything you think you know about that day, about us, about yourself. I don't care, Elena says quickly. Whatever happened, wherever you've been, we can work through it. We can. Mom. Marcus's voice cuts through her words like ice. You promise to listen. Elena presses her lips together and nods again. Marcus glances at Matthew, who takes a shaky breath before speaking. We weren't kidnapped that day. We chose to leave. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She staggers backward, her hand gripping the bridge's wooden railing for support. What? You promised to listen, Marcus reminds her, his voice gentler now but still firm. Matthew continues, his words coming faster as if he's afraid he'll lose courage. There was a man who'd been watching us for weeks, meeting us at the park after school, talking to us about things, about how we were special, about how we deserved better than what we had. Elena's vision blurs with tears. What things? What did he tell you? He told us the truth, Marcus says, and there's something in his tone that makes Elena's blood run cold. He told us that our father didn't leave because of work stress like you said. He told us Dad left because having twins was too much responsibility, because we were a burden. That's not, Elena starts, but Marcus's sharp look silences her. He told us you were struggling to take care of us alone, that you worked late into the night because you needed the money for our food, our clothes, our medical bills when Matthew got pneumonia. Marcus's voice grows harder with each word. He told us you cried yourself to sleep every night because you couldn't handle raising us by yourself. Elena feels like she's drowning. The man, whoever he was, had taken true details from their life and twisted them into weapons against her children's trust. He told us, Matthew says, his voice barely above a whisper, that you'd already started looking into boarding schools, that you were planning to send us away. Elena's knees buckle. She slides down the bridge railing until she's sitting on the weathered planks, staring up at her sons through tears. Because there's a grain of truth in that lie. She had looked into a boarding school. Just once, during a particularly difficult period when Matthew's medical bills were overwhelming and Marcus was acting out at school. She'd downloaded a single brochure, read it once, and immediately thrown it away, horrified at herself for even considering it. But somehow, this man had known about that moment of weakness. His name was Gabriel, Marcus continues. Gabriel Morrison. He said he ran a special school for gifted children. Children who needed more than their families could provide. He said we could have our own rooms, our own computers, all the books we could read. He said we could learn things that regular schools don't teach. And most importantly, Matthew adds, he said we could stay together, always, no matter what. Elena wipes her eyes with shaking hands. So you went with him willingly? We thought we were helping you, Marcus says, and for the first time, his voice cracks with emotion. We thought if we disappeared, you could start over. Have the life you wanted before you got stuck with us. Elena's sob echoes through the bridge. Stuck with you? You were my whole world. You are my whole world. We know that now, Matthew says gently. But we were 8, Mom. We believed what we wanted to believe. Elena forces herself to focus through her tears. Where did he take you? What happened after you left with him? Marcus and Matthew exchange another look, and Elena sees something pass between them, a communication weighted with 9 years of shared trauma. That's the complicated part, Marcus says finally, because Gabriel wasn't what he said he was. The school wasn't what he promised. And by the time we figured that out, we were too far from home to find our way back. Matthew unzips his backpack and pulls out a thick manila folder. Gabriel Morrison ran what he called a specialized educational program, but it was really a training facility. He collected children, smart children, usually twins or siblings who worked well together, and he taught them skills. What kind of skills? Elena asks, though she's not sure she wants to know the answer. Surveillance, Marcus says matter-of-factly. Lock-picking, electronics, social engineering. How to gain people's trust, how to blend into crowds, how to disappear when necessary. Elena stares at them in horror. He was training you to be criminals? He was training us to be useful, Matthew corrects. Gabriel had clients wealthy. People with problems they couldn't solve through legal means. Missing persons cases where the police had given up. Industrial espionage. Corporate sabotage. Sometimes ... He hesitates, glancing at Marcus. Sometimes he was hired to find children, Marcus finishes. Runaways, mostly. Kids who disappeared from foster care or abusive homes. We'd locate them. Gain their trust, convince them to come with us to somewhere safe. Elena feels sick. The missing children. The DNA evidence, you were involved. We found them, Matthew says quickly. But we never hurt them. We took them to transition houses, places where they could get help, counseling, new identities if they needed them. Some of the kids we found were genuinely in danger, Mom. We saved them. And some? Elena asks. Marcus's expression grows darker. Some were taken from loving families, just like we were. Gabriel told us they were in danger, that their families were abusive. We believed him because we wanted to believe him. Because it meant we were helping instead of ... double quotes, he trails off. Instead of what you really were, Elena finishes quietly. Kidnappers. The word hangs in the air between them like a physical presence. Elena watches her sons' faces crumple with shame and pain. And despite everything she's just learned, her maternal instincts surge forward. You were children, she says fiercely. You were manipulated and exploited. Whatever you were forced to do, whatever you think you chose to do, you were victims. Were we? Marcus asks, and his voice carries a bitter edge that breaks Elena's heart. We had chances to leave, Mom. Over the years, we had opportunities to contact authorities, to run away, to come home. But we didn't take them. Why not? Matthew answers, his voice thick with shame. Because we were good at it. Because Gabriel praised us, rewarded us, made us feel special and important. Because the life he gave us was exciting and meaningful in ways our old life never was. Elena feels like she's hearing a confession from strangers wearing her children's faces. But you came back now. You contacted me. Why? Marcus reaches into his own backpack and pulls out a newspaper clipping. Even from a distance, Elena can see her own face on the page, a photo from last year's anniversary vigil. Because we saw this, Marcus says. An article about how you still held vigils every year. How you'd never given up hope. How you'd spent your entire savings on private investigators and reward money. His voice breaks completely. We realized Gabriel had lied about that too. You didn't move on. You didn't start a new life. You spent 9 years waiting for us to come home. Elena struggles to her feet, her legs shaking. I never stopped waiting. I never stopped believing you were alive somewhere. But Mom, Matthew says, tears streaming down his face, we're not the same boys who left. We can't just come home and pretend the last 9 years didn't happen. We've done things, helped destroy families, separated children from parents who loved them. Elena takes a step toward them, and this time, neither boy backs away. Then we fix it. We find those 17, Elena counters. Gabriel's patience seems to fray slightly. Elena, I didn't come here to debate philosophy with you. I came to retrieve my students and get back to work. There are 3 new cases waiting for our attention, and the boys have skills that can't be easily replaced. They're not going anywhere with you, Elena says, though she has no idea how she enforced that statement. Actually, Gabriel says, pulling something from his coat pocket, they are. You see, Elena, the boys may have told you they chose to leave 9 years ago, but they haven't told you everything about their time with me. Elena's stomach clenches as Gabriel reveals what looks like a tablet computer. He swipes the screen, and Elena hears a sound that makes her blood freeze. Matthew's voice, younger but unmistakable, speaking words that make her want to vomit. Please, you have to come with us. Your parents aren't safe. We know how to get you somewhere better. Gabriel swipes again, and this time it's Marcus's voice, older, more confident. The transition will be easier if you cooperate. Fighting only makes it harder on everyone. Stop, Matthew says, his voice breaking. Please, Gabriel, stop. But Gabriel continues swiping through what Elena realizes is an archive of recordings, her son's voices, documented evidence of their participation in dozens of kidnappings over the years. Every conversation, every successful recruitment, every moment of what your local authorities would call criminal conspiracy, Gabriel says matter-of-factly. Stored safely in multiple locations, ready to be delivered to law enforcement if necessary. Elena stares at Marcus and Matthew, seeing the defeat in their faces. You're blackmailing them. I prefer to think of it as ensuring their continued loyalty, Gabriel says. The boys have been very effective, but they're also legally adults. Now, if they were to leave my organization and these recordings were to surface, he shrugs. Well, I imagine they'd spend the rest of their lives in federal prison. Elena feels like she's drowning. What do you want? I want my students back, Gabriel says simply. I want them to complete their current assignments. And I want you to stop interfering with operations that are far more complex than you understand. And if I refuse? Gabriel's smile returns, cold and patient. Then tomorrow morning, Detective Chun will receive a very interesting package containing audio evidence that Marcus and Matthew Hartwell have been actively involved in child trafficking for the past 5 years, along with their current location, and a detailed confession of their crimes. Elena looks at her sons, seeing the helplessness in their eyes. They're trapped, just as surely as they were 9 years ago, but now the cage is made of their own recorded voices. There has to be another way, Elena says desperately. There is, Gabriel says. You let them go. You tell the police they ran. Again, that you have no idea where they went. You go back to your life and you let them continue theirs. Their life of crime, their life of purpose, Gabriel corrects. Elena, your sons are gifted. They have skills that most people can't even imagine. They've prevented genuine tragedies, saved children from fates worse than death. Is that really such a terrible legacy? Elena looks at Marcus and Matthew, seeing something in their faces that breaks her heart. The look of children who've convinced themselves that their abuse is love, that their exploitation is opportunity. Boys, she says softly, you don't have to go with him. Whatever those recordings contain, whatever consequences we might face, we can handle them together. Marcus shakes his head sadly. Mom, you don't understand. It's not just us. Gabriel's operation has helped place over 200 children in new homes over the past decade. If the authorities shut it down, if those placements are investigated, some of those kids will be sent back to the situations we rescued them from. And some of them, Matthew adds quietly, will be sent back to families who never stopped looking for them. Families like you. Elena stares at her sons, finally understanding the full scope of the moral maze they've been trapped in. They're not just victims of kidnapping, they're victims of a systematic manipulation that's convinced them their crimes are kindnesses, their betrayals are rescues. Gabriel checks his watch. I'm afraid we need to wrap this up. Elena, what's your decision? Elena looks at her sons one more time, memorizing their faces, the way they stand together against the world even now. Then she makes a choice that surprises everyone, including herself. I'm coming with you, she says. Gabriel's composure cracks for the first time, his eyebrows rising in genuine surprise. I beg your pardon? You heard me, Elena says, her voice growing stronger with each word. I'm coming with you. If my sons are part of your operation, then I want to see it for myself. I want to understand what you've built, what they've been doing, who they've really been helping. Marcus and Matthew stare at her in horror. Mom, no, Matthew says quickly. You don't know what you're asking for. Don't. Elena steps closer to Gabriel, close enough to see the calculation flickering behind his eyes. You said yourself that you never lie to the people you work with. Prove it. Show me these children you've saved. Show me the families you've helped. If what you're doing is really as noble as you claim, then you have nothing to hide from a mother who just wants to understand her son's choices. Gabriel studies her for a long moment, and Elena can practically see him running scenarios in his mind. Elena, our operation requires absolute secrecy. We can't simply invite observers. You can invite me, Elena interrupts. Because if you don't, I'm going straight to the police with everything I've learned tonight. I'll tell them about your recordings, your blackmail, your manipulation of my children. I'll make enough noise that your entire network gets investigated. Whether my sons go to prison or not. Mom, Marcus says desperately, you're bluffing. You'd never do anything that would hurt us. Elena meets her son's eyes, and he sees something there that makes him step back, a fierce maternal determination that's been building for 9 years. Try me, she says quietly. Gabriel's laugh is sharp, almost admiring. I can see where the boys get their nerve. Very well, Elena. You want to see our operation? You want to understand what your sons have become? I'll show you. But understand that once you're inside, once you've seen how we work, you become part of it. There's no walking away with dangerous knowledge. Is that a threat? It's a reality. Gabriel says matter-of-factly. The work we do has enemies, law enforcement, rival organizations, the very people we rescue children from. If you're exposed to our methods and locations, you become a liability that must be managed. Elena looks at Marcus and Matthew, seeing the fear in their faces. Fear for her, she realizes, not of her. How long? She asks. How long what? How long until I can make my own decision about whether to stay or go? How long until you'll release all 3 of us from this ... arrangement? Gabriel considers this, his fingers drumming against his thigh. 6 months, he says finally. Long enough for you to see 3 complete operations from start to finish. Long enough to understand the full scope of what we accomplish. At the end of 6 months, if you still want to leave, if you still want to take your sons away from meaningful work, to return them to an ordinary life ... double Kia. He shrugs. We'll discuss options. Elena knows she's being manipulated. Knows that Gabriel is confident he can convince her to stay once she's seen his operation in action. But she also knows this might be her only chance to stay close to her sons, to understand what they've become, to find a way to bring them home. I want guarantees, she says. No harm comes to any of us during those 6 months. No recordings of me get made without my knowledge. And if I decide to leave at the end of 6 months, you let all 3 of us go. And if you decide to stay? Elena hesitates, then realizes she doesn't have a choice. Then we stay, all 3 of us. Gabriel extends his hand. Deal. Elena stares at his outstretched hand, knowing that shaking it might be the biggest mistake of her life. But looking at Marcus and Matthew, seeing the way they stand together, the way they've learned to protect each other against a world that's used them, she knows she can't abandon them again. She shakes Gabriel's hand. Excellent, Gabriel says, his smile returning. Now, I'm afraid we need to address the immediate situation. Elena, you'll need to return home tonight and deal with the police presence. Tell them the boys contacted you again, but ran when they saw surveillance. Tell them you have no idea where they went. More lies. Necessary lies. Tomorrow morning, you'll receive a call about a family emergency that requires you to leave town immediately. A sick relative, perhaps. Something that explains a prolonged absence without raising suspicions. Elena nods, though her stomach churns with the deception. What about the DNA evidence, the media attention? Will fade, as these things always do. Other stories will capture public attention. The investigation will continue, but without new leads, it will gradually lose priority. Gabriel checks his watch again. The boys will come with me tonight. You'll join us tomorrow evening at a location you'll be provided. Wait, Elena says as Marcus and Matthew shoulder their backpacks. I need to know they'll be safe. Safer than they've been in years, Gabriel assures her. Elena, despite what you might think of me, I care deeply about the children in my organization. Marcus and Matthew are valuable, yes, but they're also under my protection. Nothing will happen to them. Elena wants to protest, wants to demand that her sons come home with her tonight, but she knows Gabriel holds all the cards. The recordings, the blackmail, the promise of prosecution, it's all designed to ensure compliance. Mom, Matthew says, approaching her cautiously. Are you sure about this? Really sure? Elena reaches out and touches his face, the first physical contact she's had with either of her sons since their return. His skin is warm, real, alive, I'm sure, she says. We're going to figure this out, all of us together. Marcus steps forward too, allowing Elena to touch his scarred cheek. We never stopped loving you, he says quietly. Even when we thought you didn't want us anymore, we never stopped loving you. Elena's tears come freely now. I never stopped loving you. Either. Never, not for a single day. Gabriel clears his throat. I hate to interrupt this reunion, but we really do need to move. Elena, your performance with the police tomorrow will be crucial. Can you handle it? Elena wipes her eyes and nods. I've been lying to myself for 9 years about whether my sons were alive. I think I can manage lying to the police for one more day. As they prepare to leave the bridge, Gabriel pauses. Elena, there's one more thing you should know. The work we do, it's not always clean. It's not always simple. There are moral complexities that most people can't handle. If you're going to be part of this, even temporarily, you need to be prepared for that. What kind of complexities? Gabriel's smile is thin, almost sad. The kind where saving one child sometimes means sacrificing another. Where doing the right thing requires doing terrible things first. Where the line between rescue and kidnapping isn't as clear as you might think. Elena feels a chill, but she forces herself to nod. I understand. No, Gabriel says quietly, you don't, but you will. As they walk off the bridge together, Gabriel leading, Marcus and Matthew flanking Elena like protective guards. Elena realizes she's crossed more than just a physical threshold. She's entered a world where nothing is what it seems, where her sons have learned to survive by becoming something she doesn't recognize. But they're alive, they're with her. And for the first time in 9 years, they're moving forward together. Even if none of them knows where that forward motion will lead. 6 months later, Elena stands in a safe house in rural Montana, watching through a window as Marcus and Matthew prepare for what Gabriel calls their final assignment. The boys' men now, she has to remind herself, move with practiced efficiency. Checking equipment and reviewing the file of another missing child. Another family destroyed by circumstances beyond their control. Elena has seen the operation from the inside now. She's witnessed the careful research that goes into each case, the genuine horror stories of children trapped in unspeakable situations. She's watched her sons reunite siblings who'd been separated by trafficking rings, extract children from homes where they were being systematically tortured, place teenagers with loving families who could give them futures their birth parents never could. She's also watched them take children from families who were simply poor or struggling or deemed unsuitable by Gabriel's network of wealthy clients who wanted to adopt without the inconvenience of legal oversight. The moral landscape Gabriel promised would be complex has proven to be a minefield, where every step threatens to explode the carefully constructed justifications Elena has built for staying. Second thoughts? Gabriel's voice comes from behind her, carrying that familiar tone of paternal concern that Elena now recognizes as a manipulation technique. Every day, Elena admits, not turning from the window. But not about staying with my sons. Over the past 6 months, Elena has learned things about Gabriel's operation that both horrify and impress her. The network spans 12 countries and has successfully placed over 400 children in new situations. The success rate, defined as children who are demonstrably better off 5 years after placement, is genuinely impressive. But the definition of better off includes children who never see their birth families again, never know their real names, never have the chance to decide for themselves whether they needed saving. Elena has also learned that Gabriel isn't the only person running this kind of operation. There are at least 6 similar networks worldwide, some focused on genuine rescue, others that are simply sophisticated trafficking rings wearing the mask of humanitarian work. Gabriel's organization falls somewhere in the murky middle, which makes it both more and less evil than Elena initially believed. The Hendricks case is their last one, Gabriel says, joining Elena at the window. After this, I'm prepared to honor our agreement. All 3 of you are free to leave if that's what you choose. Elena watches Marcus adjust the strap on his surveillance pack. 6 months ago, she would have been horrified to see her son preparing for what amounts to a kidnapping operation. Now, she knows that the Hendricks case involves twin girls, whose father has been selling them to pay for his methamphetamine addiction. The girls' mother died in a car accident 2 years ago, and their father has systematically isolated them from any family members who might intervene. Will you really let us go? Elena asks. Gabriel considers this seriously. Elena, you've seen how we work. You understand the necessity of what we do, even if you don't approve of all our methods. More importantly, you've seen how essential Marcus and Matthew are to our success. Do I want to lose them? No. Will I force them to stay? Also no. Elena turns to face Gabriel directly. What's the catch? There's always a catch with you, Gabriel says with what might be genuine fondness. The catch is that if you leave, you'll know things about our operation that could endanger other children if they fell into the wrong hands. So you'll need to disappear completely. New identities, new location, no contact with your old life. Elena had expected this. And if we stay? If you stay, Marcus and Matthew transition into leadership roles. They start training the next generation of operatives. Joby pauses, studying her face. You help us improve our family assessment protocols. Your insights into genuine versus manufactured family dysfunction have been invaluable. Elena knows he's right. Over the past 6 months, she's helped Gabriel's team avoid taking 3 children who would have been genuinely harmed by separation from their families. She's also identified 2 situations where Gabriel's initial assessment missed signs of serious abuse. And if I stay but the boys want to leave, then you stay and they leave. Elena, despite what you might think, I don't keep unwilling participants. Resentful operatives make mistakes that endanger everyone. Through the window, Elena sees Marcus and Matthew approaching the house. In a few hours, they'll infiltrate the Hendricks property, gain the trust of 2 terrified little girls, and spirit them away to a foster family in Canada who will give them love, education, and safety they'd never have in their current situation. Elena has spent 6 months trying to find another solution: legal channels, social services, law enforcement intervention. But the Hendricks family has been investigated twice by Child Protective Services, and both times, the father's connections in local law enforcement helped him avoid consequences. The girls are running out of time, and Gabriel's network might be their only chance. Marcus and Matthew enter the house, their faces serious but not grim. This is just work to them, now difficult. Sometimes heartbreaking work, but work they believe in. Mom, Matthew says, setting down his equipment bag. We need to talk. Elena's heart clenches. She knows what this conversation is about because she's been dreading it for weeks. Marcus and I have been talking, Matthew continues, glancing at his brother for support, about after tonight, about what we want to do. Elena waits, though she's not sure she wants to hear their decision. Marcus steps forward. We want to stay. The words hit Elena like a physical blow, even though she'd suspected this was coming. Stay with Gabriel's organization? Stay with the work, Marcus corrects. Mom, in 6 months we've helped place 18 children in safer situations. 18 kids who have futures now that they wouldn't have had otherwise. How do we walk away from that? Elena looks at her sons, tall, capable, committed to something larger than themselves, and realizes that Gabriel has given them something she never could. A sense of purpose that makes their painful history feel meaningful. And if I want to leave? She asks quietly. Matthew's face crumples. Then we leave too. We're not losing you again, Mom. Not ever. Elena stares at them, understanding finally that Gabriel's greatest manipulation wasn't the recordings, or the blackmail or the moral complexity of the work. It was showing her sons and her that they could be heroes in a world that desperately needs heroes, even if heroism sometimes requires terrible choices. What if we tried to do this work legally? Elena asks. What if we contacted authorities? Tried to reform the system from inside? Gabriel answers before the boys can. Then you'd spend years fighting bureaucracy while children suffer. You'd save maybe 1 child for every 10 we save now. Is that acceptable to you? Elena knows he's right, which makes her decision both easier and infinitely harder. She looks at Marcus and Matthew, sees the hope and fear in their faces as they wait for her answer. She thinks about the little girls they'll save tonight, about the 18 children they've already helped, about the moral compromises she's made that somehow feel less like compromises and more like evolution. We stay, she says finally. All of us. We stay, and we try to make this network into something better than what it is. Gabriel's smile is genuinely pleased. Welcome to the family business, Elena. As Elena watches her sons prepare for their final mission as operatives and their first as leaders, she realizes that the search for Marcus and Matthew that began 9 years ago in a snowstorm has finally ended. Not with a rescue, not with a return to innocence, but with an acceptance that sometimes love means following your children into the darkness and helping them find ways to create light. Outside, snow begins to fall, the first of the season. Elena watches the flakes drift past the window and thinks about another December day, another set of choices that changed everything. Then she turns away from the window and goes to help her sons save another set of children, because that's what families do. They save each other, and then they save everyone else they can reach, even when the price of salvation is higher than anyone should have to pay.